Hello and welcome. Supreme Court affirms victory of Doye Diri as duly elected governor of Bayelsa State, dismisses 6 appeals filed against the governor and his deputy. Former chairman of the Pension Reform Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina, loses bail as court orders his arrest following his absence in court. House Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila leads dialogue on urgent reforms in the Nigeria police, says lawmakers are resolved to ensure better policing system. And more breakthroughs in the quest to contain COVID-19 as vaccine developed by Pfizer and BioNTech said to protect 94% of adults over 65 years. Plus we'll have business, sports, and later on news from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed refused report of planned increase in taxes as Federal Executive Council approves 2020 finance bill to support the 2021 budget.
On sports news tonight, the Minister of Youth and Sports Development questions the competence of Super Eagles coach Gennett Rohr after back-to-back draws against Sierra Leone in AFCON qualifier.
We begin tonight at the Supreme Court, where a 7-man panel today affirmed Doye Diri as the duly elected governor of Bayelsa State. In a unanimous judgment delivered by Justice Sylvester Nguta, the Apex Court dismissed the 6 appeals filed against the governor and his deputy. In his judgment, Justice Nguta predicated the dismissal of the appeals on the withdrawal of same by lawyers to the appellants. The dismissed appeals were filed by Alliance for Democracy, Advanced Nigeria Democratic Party, Labour Movement and Accord Party against Governor Diri and his deputy.
It is the end of the road for the Advanced Nigeria Democratic Party and 5 other appellants who insists that Senator Doye Diri and his deputy were not duly elected to govern Bayelsa State. The Advanced Nigeria Democratic Party, in its appeal, claimed that their candidate was unlawfully excluded by the Independent National Electoral Commission, even though he was 34 years old at the time of the election, as against the constitutional requirement of 35 years. In the other appeals, the appellants claimed that the Bayelsa State Deputy Governor presented a forged NYSC discharge certificate to the Independent National Electoral Commission. The 7-man panel of the court established the fact that the candidate of the Advanced Nigeria Democratic Party was indeed underaged at the time of the election. This prompted the lawyer to the appellant to withdraw his appeal. It was subsequently dismissed to the admiration of lawyers to the governor and INEC.
The Supreme Court has dismissed the entire 6 appeals challenging the election of the governor of Bayelsa State. And as you saw in court today, all these appeals were shown to be frivolous.
It is expected, that is in line with the law, that talking about the ANDP appeal, it is obvious that if somebody constitutionally is not qualified, he cannot claim to be unlawfully excluded.
In the case of the alleged forged certificate preferred against the deputy governor, the Apex Court also established that the National Youth Service Corps, as the issuing authority, confirmed the authenticity of the certificate. Subsequently, counsel to the appellants also withdrew their appeals, leading to their dismissal by the court.
We are grateful to the court that the truth has been said. The deputy governor never forged any certificates. The court has said it all, that the institutions that issued the certificates has testified, and the court believed it.
We are very sure that our candidates were eminently qualified for the elections. So what the Supreme Court has done today in all the 6 appeals is to affirm those positions that we took from the tribunal to this point.
Governor Diri of the People's Democratic Party was declared the elected governor of the state following a Supreme Court's judgment disqualifying the All Progressives Congress's candidate, David Leon, who had earlier emerged the winner of the poll.
Meanwhile, Governor Doye Diri is again appealing to politicians in Bayelsa State to sheath their swords and cooperate with his administration to advance the cause of the state. The governor, who spoke in Abuja shortly after the Supreme Court affirmed him as the duly elected governor of the state, applauded the judgment of the Apex Court. He says this has laid to rest all the gimmicks by some politicians to get him out of office at all costs.
Well, my reaction is what I've said over the period leading to the Supreme Court judgment. And it has been that as a state, we do not need all of these distractions. As a state, we are one state that the brotherhood should be predominant. And that after elections, particularly when a governor has taken the oath of office, we expected everybody to support and bring their ideas on board for Bayelsa to succeed, for Bayelsa to grow, for Bayelsa to be prosperous. We have tagged our administration as an administration of prosperity. And so today marks the end of litigations. Constitutionally, I believe that today is the end of all litigations. And once again, I want to call on my brothers who have gone on this appeal. Of course, it's their right to go on appeal. It's their right to take their matter to the end. After all, Trump, the best democracy that we all believe in the United States, is going on litigations, a barrage of litigations. And so it's their right to go on litigations.
And staying with legal matters, the Federal High Court in Abuja has issued a warrant of arrest against former chairman of the Pension Reform Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina, following his absence in court for the fourth consecutive time. Mr. Maina is standing trial on alleged 2 billion naira fraud charges brought against him by the federal government. At the resumed trial in Abuja, Justice Oko Nabang ordered security agents in the country to arrest Mr. Maina wherever he is found and bring him before the court to face the consequences of jumping bail. Before issuing the order for his arrest, Justice Abang revoked the 500 million naira bail he granted Mr. Maina on the ground that the bail had been abused following his persistent absence in court. Justice Abang also granted the request of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission that the trial in the fraud charges be conducted in his absence. Before adjourning trial to November the 23rd, Justice Abang gave Mr. Maina's surety, Senator Ali Ndume, the same date to show cause why he should not forfeit the 500 million naira bail bond to the federal government due to the absence of Mr. Maina. And staying with legal matters, a Kaduna State High Court sitting in the state capital has commenced accelerated hearing on the trial of the embattled leader of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaky, and his wife, Zinat. At the resumed hearing of the matter today, 2 witnesses from the Nigerian army were presented before the court, and after making their submissions, they were cross-examined by the defense counsel, Femi Falana. El-Zakzaky and his wife have been in detention since December 2015, following clashes between members of the IMN and the Nigerian army in Zaria, Kaduna State. They are being prosecuted by the Kaduna State government on 8 counts bordering on alleged culpable homicide, unlawful assembly, and disruption of public peace, among other charges. According to Mr. Falana, 14 more witnesses are expected to testify before the court during the continuation of trial tomorrow, November the 19th, 2020.
Trial commenced today, and 2 witnesses were taken, and so the trial will continue tomorrow. The proceedings will continue tomorrow. But we would like to appeal to the authorities in Kaduna State, both the government and the security forces, that since our clients are not being brought to court on earth ground. We don't really need to block all roads leading to the court so that people can move and go about their normal business. Witnesses have been discharged, so they will continue tomorrow. Well, I think they still have about 16. Yeah.
16 outstanding.
Yeah, about 16 outstanding.
Okay, the 2 witnesses now.
They are military officers. No, they gave evidence about the operation of the military operation that lasted between the 12th and the 14th of December 2015, and the role played by each of them. We just want to see how far we can go tomorrow. The prosecution is not likely to close the case tomorrow. So we'll then take other days so that we can speedily, have this matter concluded because the court has granted accelerated guard.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, has promised that the House of Representatives will ensure a better police system. According to him, as the nation pursues police reforms, it's necessary to ensure restoration of trust for the Nigerian police. He stated this during a policy dialogue of the House of Representatives. Our correspondent Terry Ikumi reports.
The 9th House of Representatives has invited stakeholders for a conversation on policing and human rights in Nigeria. The dialogue takes a look at the proposed bill for the Police Service Commission, whose responsibility it is to sanction erring police officers.
What we are about to discuss here is very important because in that act, there have not been any provision for any erring police officer who goes beyond his core mandate. There have not been provision for sanction.
This dialogue is an innovative step in the bill-making process. It is aimed at introducing stakeholder ownership of the legislative process.
In emphasizing the need for police reforms, the UNDP resident representative to Nigeria and the Speaker of the House of Representatives speak on the disconnect between the citizens and the police.
If you ask or talk to many citizens, which have had an opportunity to engage recently, there's a huge deficit in police and policing in Nigeria.
We do not have an effective system of policing when the relationships between communities and the police are defined by fear and mistrust. We want to help them be better public servants by making it easier to remove rogue officers from amongst their midst, because bad police make it impossible for good police to do their work.
One of the points at the technical session of the event is human rights violation by the police.
Orientation is being addressed. So the intendment, Mr. Speaker, is to give powers to the Police Service Commission to intervene even at the level of curriculum, so that we are turning around their mindset even from the get-go when they get into the police force, to understand what the Constitution provides, to understand what the rights of citizens are.
If I write a petition today against the NBA president, that he's involved in an armed robbery in my village, the first mode of operation will be to arrest the NBA president before investigation starts. What does that tell you? That he's actually guilty. He now has to prove himself innocent.
The Speaker bears his thoughts on the appearance of some policemen.
Shed out, sometimes rubber slippers, probably very unkempt. It's kind of very difficult to look at him with the respect and authority of state.
A public hearing will still be held on the proposed bill after it scales second reading in the House of Representatives. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, we have more on the House policy dialogue on police reforms, and we'll be joined by the Chairman, House Committee on Judiciary, Honorable Onofiok Luke. That's in a moment. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Supreme Court affirms victory of Doye Diri as duly elected governor of Bayelsa State, dismisses 6 appeals filed against the governor and his deputy. Former chairman of the Pension Reform Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina, loses bail as court orders his arrest following his absence in court. House Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila leads dialogue on urgent reforms in the Nigeria police, says lawmakers are resolved to ensure better policing system. And more breakthroughs in the quest to contain COVID-19 as vaccine developed by Pfizer and BioNTech is said to protect 94% of adults over 65 years. Now let's discuss the House Policy Dialogue on Police Reforms. I'm now being joined live from Abuja by the Chairman, House Committee on Judiciary, Enofiok Luke. Thanks so much for joining us on the News at 10.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Now, from the Speaker's comments today saying Nigeria can't afford to have corrupt police officers within its fold, what immediate steps are being taken, at least from a legislative perspective, especially at a time like this?
I would take you down history lane that at the emergence of Femi Gbajabiamila as the Speaker of the House of Representatives, he promised that he's going to bring in some reforms in certain aspects, in certain areas, judiciary, police, in agriculture, in the economy. And he had to concretize on these by coming up with the House legislative agenda. And part of that agenda was specifically stated police reforms. And that led us to immediately passing the Police Force Establishment Act 2020. And the general objectives of that act was to provide for a better police system that is based on transparency, based on accountability, based on rule of law, based on the promotion and protection of the fundamental human rights of our citizens, and in all, to ensure better police-community relationship. So that is the bottom line, and we have followed up with this policy dialogue that we have had today, and this is part of the series. The policy dialogue was actually to get input from the youths who were actively involved in the NSAS protest, get input from professional bodies like the Nigerian Bar Association, get input from civil society. So it is after we have gotten this input that we will now know what to do as a legislator to come up maybe with a proposed bill which we would present before the House and then allow it to pass through the different legislative stages or processes.
All right. Now, the officers and men of the force are under the command of the IGP, and their day-to-day operations are not overseen by the legislature. How effective will your role be in ensuring the reforms you're talking about in terms of impact?
By the doctrines of separation of power, checks and balances, we are all acting as checks on each other. The legislature, the police force is under the executive. And the executive, we have the power of the purse. We have the powers of the oversight function over the executive. So in the course of performing our oversight function, I believe that we are going to use our power of oversight function, the power of the force, the power of the purse to get the police force to actually be in line with what we could call international best practices. So we have the powers to get the police to do what they are to do, but not exercise of raw power, but the power that has been granted us by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Again, we have the powers of legislation. I just talked about the Police Force Establishment Act of 2020, which was passed by the National Assembly. You see that there is no way the officers and the men of the police force would say they are not going to obey the principles of the law or the provisions of the law that had been passed. So with the powers of legislation, with the powers of oversight, I believe that we can get the police force to actually be and do what they ought to do. The other one is we have the Police Service Commission established by Section 153, Sub 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended. And the Police Service Commission has the powers to discipline, has the powers to employ, has the powers to recruit, and then has the power of promotion over the officers and men of the police force, excepting the Inspector General of Police, whose powers of appointment, whose appointment lies with the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So I believe that as the conversation goes, there are agitations for the amendment of the Police Service Commission Act. And if that happens, that is one area too that we believe that we are going to get the men and the officers of the police force to comply with the legislation that we have. Now, the outcome of today's deliberation, we have had people agitating for investigators to be appointed and into police service commissions to investigate complaints of misconduct, to investigate complaints of violations of human rights in the respective offices of the Police Service Commission that people have agitated today, have submitted memoranda that there has to be state offices of the Police Service Commission so that it can be closer to the people at the grassroots. So
okay,
I believe with a few
yeah.
of these, if we get it into legislation, it's going to come out good for Nigerians, and I believe that the police force would abide by the provisions of such acts.
All right, finally now, as a final question. Yes, you were talking about the input, and the expectations that people have. So let me just ask you finally now about the Judicial Panel of Inquiry set up across the states looking into the allegations of police brutality. How can you ensure that the outcome will meet the expectations of people who have been aggrieved? Everybody's watching the sessions and hoping that the outcome will be as expected. What's your role in that? And quickly, please.
I think we would not make a comment to either jeopardize the function of the judicial panel because we have seen different scenarios play out in different panels in different states. Like I think over the weekend, I was watching the judicial panel in Lagos having to talk with the army. I've not seen that happen in other states, maybe addressing army. Others are maybe only police. So I wouldn't make, like a lawyer, which I am, I would not say that those matters are sub judice, but the only concern we have is that we need to have a sincerity from the part of the federal government. A situation where the federal government has set up this judicial panel of inquiry, which is quite very applaudable, which is quite very accepted, quite very, it's commendable. But on the other hand, we have read on the papers and we have seen that some account of persons who were involved in the exercise are being subjected to some legal processes. So let us not give with one hand and take with the other hand. We should have Nigerians have confidence in judicial panel of inquiry by our respective actions beyond the panel of inquiry so that Nigerians can have confidence to go out there and then give their input. And I want to believe that I don't know what the federal government wants to do at the executive level with the outcome of the report, but if it comes to the legislature, I believe that we will take some lessons from the report, from the white paper that we'll get from the judicial panel of inquiry, and then we will see some lessons that we can make, and then give some legislative backing for them to become legislations in areas that we need to strengthen the Nigerian police force so that we meet at that intersection of community policing and enforcement of fundamental human rights without any infringing on the other.
All right. Thank you, Chairman, House Committee on Judiciary, Enofiok Luke. Thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts with us on the news at 10 tonight.
Thank you.
12 assets belonging to the chairman of the Global Fleet Group, Jimoh Ibrahim, have been taken over by the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria, AMCON, which has also frozen all his accounts and those of his companies, including Global Fleet Oil and Gas Limited. Now, this is according to the ANCOM spokesperson, Jude Muzo, who says the seizure of the assets is due to his debt, which amounts to 69.4 billion naira and is pursuant to an order of the Federal High Court in Lagos. AMCON today took effective possession of the 12 properties, including the Nikon Investment Limited building in Abuja, Nikon Hotels Limited building also in Abuja, and the Nikon Lekki Limited building in Lagos. The court also granted AMCON possession over all shares belonging to Mr. Jimo Ibrahim and his two companies that are domiciled in the Nigerian Reinsurance Company PLC, Nikon Insurance Company PLC, Nigeria Stockbrokers Limited, and Nikon Trustees Limited. When the news at 10 returns, Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed refutes reports of planned increase in taxes as Federal Executive Council approves 2020 finance bill. And that's on Business News. Please join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. The independent investigative panel probing allegations of police brutality continued its sitting today in the nation's capital. This time the panel listened to the testimony of one Mrs. Doris Idedia, who is alleging that her younger brother died in the custody of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. In an emotion-laden voice, Mrs. Idedia narrated the events of September the 3rd, 2016, the last day she saw her brother alive.
A total of 8 cases were slated for hearing as the FCT panel of inquiry begins sitting. The cases range from extrajudicial killing and refusal to release a corpse to denial of access to justice and intimidation. One after the other, the victims take turns to tell their story of alleged brutality by men of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS. Mrs. Doris Idedia had a peculiar case, as she alleges how her younger brother, Felix Idehe, died in the custody of SARS and a subsequent refusal by the police to release his body to the family.
He left us, he didn't eat anything, he died on the 6th.
As she struggles with her emotions, she narrates how her late brother was arrested in Kaduna and subsequently died in police custody in Abuja.
He saw a car and the car was chasing him. He was running, he was thinking maybe they are kidnappers or something. He doesn't know why they are following him. He was running, they were chasing him. He got to a point, he doesn't even know where to run to because he's new in that environment. Kisley was now calling my brother thief, that he's a thief. So they all helped him to beat him very well. They put him behind the hillocks on the floor in the car. No mat, no mattress. He was not putting on dress on the floor and the rain. Under the rain, that day was very sunny. My brother suffered. He died in pains. There's a guy that's supposed to be in Canada, processed his visa, and he never got there. It was not easy.
Counsel to the police request for more time to get their facts ready for cross-examination.
That's what I want to plead with the panel. If they can avail us the opportunity, considering the sensitive.
What is his full name?
Kingsley. I would not know the full name until I come in contact with him.
You will not cross-examine her today? No cross-examination today?
That's what I'm pleading. I'm pleading so that let's hear from him and know how we can flow.
The family is demanding for the sum of 200 million naira as compensation. The chairman of the panel, Justice Suleiman Galadima, adjourns the case to December 15th for cross-examination.
Now, one of the persons arrested on charges of inciting civil unrest during the NSAS protest in Lagos is Peter Eromosele, and he'll be spending more time in custody despite meeting his bail conditions. Eromosele, who was granted bail yesterday by the Magistrate Court in Yaba, Lagos, was expected to be out today, according to his lawyer, Babatunde Jinodu. who frowned on the absence of the magistrate to sign the bail papers. But the Commissioner of Police in the state, Hakeem Odumosun, says it's not out of place for any suspect to go through the protocol before a final release is effected. There's no letting up in the 2023 presidential race, and events begin to unfold. The governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, has been shedding light on the speculations about his interest in the race. He was on our program, Politics Today.
I mean, wasn't Tamboa with all due respect to anybody. He's my friend. I don't deny friendship. I know people who would, because of one thing, people are talking against the person, then I say, oh, no, I don't want to associate myself. No way. I mean, it was that Tomba has not come back to me to tell me that he wants to run for president for 2023. But let me tell you, if he comes and I compare with those who are running with him, and I can make a choice, I owe nobody any apologies at all. So all these allegations, in fact, let me tell you, if anybody who's saying that I have a mission, I'm a committed PDP member. If people who are not committed to PDP, who are spies in PDP, can have ambition to run for in PDP, is it me who is committed, who has done so much for PDP that cannot have an ambition?
Meanwhile, the president has reacted to the defection of the Ebonyi State Governor Dave Umahi to the All Progressives Congress, commending him for the decision. In a statement, his spokesperson Garba Shehu for President Buhari said Governor Umahi's defection was based on the principle rather than coercion, saying he's proud of him for taking the step. He states, "Good governance is very important to us in the APC, and I'm glad that the governor has cited this as a major factor in his decision to join us. I urge our citizens to pay less emphasis on identity politics if we want our democracy to make a positive impact on our country." He notes that with men like Umahi, he foresees a brighter future for Nigeria's democracy. Meanwhile, members of the PDP Ebonyi National Assembly caucus say no federal lawmaker in Ebonyi State is defecting to the ruling All Progressives Congress. And that's in reaction to the defection of the Ebonyi State governor from the PDP to the ruling APC. Briefing journalists at the National Assembly, the spokesperson for the group, Senator Sam Egu, maintains that they remain proud card-carrying members of the PDP. The Nigeria Association of Petroleum Explorationists says it's considering the possibility of pushing for an energy bank that's tailor-made to understand and fund oil and gas activities in Nigeria. And that was the talking point at the 38th Annual International Conference of NAPE. The conference speaker, Vice President Professor Yemi Oshibajo, who was represented by the Minister of State for Petroleum, Timipre Silva, and others, emphasized the need to push for more exploration, bring product costs to $10 per barrel as well. Our energy correspondent, Olu Phillips, reports.
Never mind a few personalities and guests in this room. These are top petroleum engineers, CEOs, board of trustees, and top executives of the National Association of Petroleum Explorationists. 37 times since the establishment of the association 45 years ago, this kind of conference has always held, and COVID isn't going to stop this. More have joined online, and they are looking at the theme, accelerating growth in Nigeria's hydrocarbons reserve, emerging concepts, challenges, and opportunities. Operational word is opportunities. Nigeria is a big oil country, even bigger on gas. So let's listen.
There is close to 2 billion cubic feet of gas per day that is flared. in our various fields in the country. This could generate close to 8,000 megawatts of electricity per day. One other area of opportunity, which I think is actually just waiting to be picked by people, all right, is security.
There's still so much to do and so much to earn in billions of dollars, just as government has also thrown up the challenge.
In order to grow our reserves, we have proposed fiscal incentives that would attract investments in our basins in the petroleum industry bill. In addition, the fiscal provisions for gas business will be one of the most attractive in Africa.
There are two things you have to do. First, you need to pull down your costs and increase your revenue, and there's no way of doing this except you take a full look at your portfolio, which is what we did with our partners, and I'm happy that that part of the outcome of the technical team that reviewed the pre-conference workshop that took place. And what we focus now on is to reduce cost, essentially.
Too many lessons from COVID and attendant low oil prices.
Without exploration, it will be quite a big challenge to sustain the business. And because of continuous energy demand, in spite of all the challenges, exploration and reserves addition, reserve growth for the nation like ours need to be encouraged.
How do we have an energy bank? How do we have an oil and gas bank, which is set up to first, by setting up that bank, it would inherently understand and appreciate our operations.
Highlight of the day is the recognition given to Chief Afolabi for his contributions. He gets the highest honor, the Harriet Adams Award.
Within the office.
NAPE has its job cut out and will be clear when they implement them.
Let's take a look at some business news now. Here's Teniola Shobawali.
Thanks a lot, Ijoma. Nigerians should have no fear because the incremental changes to the country's tax laws does not mean that there will be an increase in taxes. This assurance is coming from the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, at end of the 24th Virtual Federal Executive Council meeting. She spoke to State House correspondents after the Council approved the Finance Bill 2020, which will now be sent to Parliament for assent. The Federation Accounts Allocation Committee has shared a total of 604.004 billion naira to the three tiers of government as revenue distribution for the month of October. In a statement released today by FAC, the federal government received 220.75 billion naira, 161.82 billion naira was allocated to states, local government councils got 120.58 billion naira, while 31.90 billion naira was dispersed to all producing states as 13% derivation of mineral revenue. The statement also mentions that oil and gas royalty as well as companies' income tax increased substantially, while import duty, excise duty, value-added tax and petroleum profit tax recorded decreases. After 2 days of profit-taking, the domestic stock market made a strong rebound today, regaining 301 billion naira out of the 415 billion naira lost in the previous sessions this week. Chimeze Obi-Iwagu has the details.
Thanks and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Tanya was right when I told you yesterday that the market was simply on correction mode in the past 3 trading sessions. And just like the stockbroker I spoke with predicted, the market rebounded. That bellow by the bull pushed the timid bear into hibernation again. And to tell you, the bull remains in control of the market now. The index was up almost 2%, gaining back much of what was lost in the previous session. Those heavyweight champions that had a haircut yesterday regained their losses. I'm talking about the likes of Dangote Cement, WAPCO, Nigerian Breweries, and Zenith Bank. Look at the sector chart. It was majorly green. This is the sweetest time to play in the equities market, I must tell you, because there's a lot of prospects. Even those that cashed out are returning. Don't forget, earnings from most of the banks are being expected and investors are positioning for dividend payout by year-end, coupled with a low-yield environment in the fixed income market that has continued to drive investor interest for equities. We saw a lot of bargain hunting. Over 661 million shares were traded, valued at about 8 billion naira in 7,324 deals. Our traders expect to see a steady rise going forward. But mind you, there are short-term investors who might want to take quick profit. But generally, it's looking good for the equities market, so you can give it a shot. And that was the stock market report. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago.
And that's Business News Tonight. I'm Teniola Shobowale. Back to you, Ijeoma.
Thanks a lot, Teniola. Still ahead on the news at 10, more breakthroughs in the quest to contain COVID-19 as vaccine developed by Pfizer and BioNTech is touted to protect 94% of adults over 65 years old. And more from our London studio in Around the World in 5. Do stay with us. Welcome back. The coronavirus vaccine developed by Pfizer and BioNTech appears to protect 94% of adults over 65 years old. Here's Simon Pusey with more in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Ethiopia's forces have captured 2 towns in the northern region of Tigray where soldiers loyal to the local political party are fighting the central government. Tigray's leader confirmed the losses but said it was a temporary setback and vowed to defeat the government. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has said his army is advancing on the Tigrayan capital Mekelle. Hundreds of people have reportedly died in 2 weeks of clashes. Hundreds of migrants have been removed by police from a crowded dock in Spain's Canary Islands following a sharp rise in the number of people arriving there from Africa. A group of 225 people were evicted from the port of Gran Canaria on Tuesday, but thousands still remain. It follows protests over conditions at the port, which an immigration judge earlier described as inhumane. A total of 16,700 migrants have reached the Canary Islands so far this year. That's a rise of more than 1,000% on the same period last year, according to official data from the Spanish government. More than half of this year's arrivals took place over the last month. Storm Iota has reached Honduras after unleashing torrential floods and highly destructive winds in neighboring Nicaragua. President Juan Orlando Hernandez warned that all of Honduras is at risk after the storm ravaged Central America on its passage, causing swollen rivers to burst their banks, flipping roofs onto streets and killing at least 9 people across the region. The Honduran government has closed bridges and highways across the country while opening more than 600 shelters where some 13,000 residents are seeking refuge. Iota is the strongest storm on record to reach Nicaragua, bringing winds of nearly 249 kilometers an hour and flooding villages still reeling from the impact of Hurricane Eta 2 weeks ago. It's the first time 2 major hurricanes have formed in the Atlantic basin in November since records began. Thai protesters and police have clashed again in the worst violence the country has seen since protests began in July. Demonstrators pushed past barricades outside Parliament as police fired back with water cannon and tear gas. Over 50 people have been hurt so far, some with gunshot wounds, but the police have denied they had opened fire with live ammunition or rubber bullets. Thousands of anti-government demonstrators met outside Parliament calling for constitutional change, curbing the powers of the King and the removal of the Prime Minister. Lawmakers in Parliament are discussing several proposals for constitutional changes, although most leave the King's powers untouched. Close to 90,000 sexual abuse claims have been filed against the Boy Scouts of America Association. The number far exceeds the initial projections of lawyers across the United States who have been signing up clients since the Boy Scouts filed for bankruptcy in protection in February in the face of hundreds of lawsuits alleging decades-old sex abuse by Scout leaders. Founded in 1910, the organisation has been overwhelmed by hundreds of claims after several states removed legal hurdles that had barred people from suing over old allegations of child sexual abuse. The Democratic Republic of Congo has announced the end of an almost 6-month Ebola outbreak in the west of the country. Health authorities are reportedly looking to apply lessons from the successful response to the fight against COVID-19 in Africa. The DRC's Ebola outbreak, which infected 130 people and killed 55, emerged in June, just weeks before a separate Ebola epidemic in the country's east drew to a close. That one had killed more than 2,200 people, the second most in the disease's history, after the outbreak in West Africa in 2014. The British government has announced that new cars and vans powered wholly by petrol and diesel will not be sold in the UK from 2030. The plan is part of what the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called the country's green revolution. Critics argue the £4 billion allocated is far too small for the scale of the challenge, but Mr Johnson says the plan will mobilise £14 billion worth of government money, with as much as 3 times that amount coming from the private sector, and create and support 250,000 highly skilled green jobs in the next decade. And finally, a radiologist in the morning and an artist by night, 62-year-old Egyptian Ahmed Hassan is using matchsticks to create dazzling replicas of famous landmarks. His home in the city of Gerza is full of artwork representing the ancient and modern wonders of the world, exclusively made out of matchsticks. Each piece takes him months to finish. His works include the Notre Dame de Paris Cathedral, Alexandria's Lighthouse, the Library of Alexandria and the Tower Bridge in London. He participated in some exhibitions in Egypt and has donated some of its artwork, including the replica of the Suez Canal. However, he says he does not plan to sell any of his pieces. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. The Minister of Youth and Sports Development, Sunday Dare, has been reacting to the performance of the Super Eagles of Nigeria in the 2-leg African Nations Cup qualifier against the Lone Stars of Sierra Leone. The Minister in his verified Twitter handle this evening tweeted, "The performance of the Super Eagles from their last 2 matches caused to question the suitability and competences of technical advisor Rua. Nigerian football deserves better. The needful will be done. Apologies to all football lovers." And that's a wrap on sports news. Ijoma, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Ayotunde. And the main news again. The Supreme Court today affirmed the victory of Doye Diri as the duly elected governor of Bayelsa State and dismissed 6 appeals filed against the governor and his deputy. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Good night. Stay safe.